So good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to give it maybe a few seconds so that we let a few more people join, and we'll get started because we do have a 60-minute time slot for this, and I believe we have a packed agenda that should make for a very engaging conversation. So I'll just give it a few more seconds and then I'll get going. Okay, I'm going to get going now. So, greetings, everyone. Welcome to Money, Media, and Machines to Build a Better World. I'm Alok Deshmukh. I'm your host for today. I've been in the sustainability space for over 2 decades. I'm one of India's 9 lead fellows. I've contributed to more than 125 projects in 11 countries, including the greening of the Empire State Building, which has led to one of my proudest accomplishments, which was the autographed transcript of a speech from President Bill Clinton, in which he has thanked me by name. Um, I am a co-founder at Superhuman Race. We're dedicated to leveraging AI for good, aiming to scale impact by contextualizing it against your business or individual performance. As we've been building Superhuman Race, my co-founder and I came to a realization that companies and individuals aspire to make a positive impact, but there is an inability to effectively convey the intent, actions, and outcomes to decision makers, whether it's in day-to-day life or in business or in government. And we believe that this blocks organizations and citizens from realizing the full human potential of executing what we really need to do, which is get to the just and green transitions. So with Money, Media, and Machines, what we're trying to do is bridge this gap and communicate data-driven impact to accelerate a green transition in a language that resonates with decision makers and with people at large. We also want to go beyond lip service, and we all know there's far too much of that. So, to my guests as well as to the attendees, I would say feel free to offer raw, unfiltered, and provocative thoughts and questions. Um, it is fitting that we kick this series off with our International Women's Day episode. A little bit of context, I won't talk a lot, but there has been data that has strong evidence to suggest that companies benefit greatly from women in leadership roles. My sense is that it would be the same with even the world or with countries or local governments. Um, so whether it is in entrepreneurship or women in the board or in the C-suite, but the latest numbers are dismal. They continue to be abysmal. Um, the proportion of roles by women falls dramatically from the entry level, which is almost 50%, to the C-suite, which gets to about 25%, and in science, technology, engineering, and math, it drops all the way down to 12%. We continue to experience volatility, and yet again, as we saw during the pandemic as well, women bear the brunt of these shocks. And despite several studies backing women-driven economic potential across companies, the reality is far from ideal. And there is a disconnect between the intent and the reality, which highlights a very critical action and communication gap. I actually find the pace of progress to be very bothersome, and I often wonder if it bothers anyone else. So to uncover these underlying issues and discuss vectors for a better future, I have three powerhouse leaders join me for the first episode of Money, Media, and Machines. So first, I'll talk about Manisha briefly. Manisha is a noted journalist in real estate and urban development and personal finance. She currently hosts the primetime show The Urban Agenda on NETV 24/7. She's best known for several of her primetime shows, the property show Let's Talk Money on NDTV and Urban Reality, and The Real Deal on CNBC TV 18. Her connect with viewers comes from well-researched editorial content, which maps real estate trends, urban transformation, and sustainable built environments through the lens of policy and investments. Manisha learned the ropes of television journalism as a reporter for BBC World programs like Moneywise and India Business Report. She's anchored over 2,000 hours of live business news, including key events as the Union Budget, Economic Survey, Credit Policy, and Tax Roundtables with NDTV. She has also been a contributory columnist with Indian Express, CNBC TV 18, and NDTV.com. Manisha has been invited to moderate significant global events as well, the World Bank Spring Meet Sustainability Dialogue in Washington, D.C. and New Cities Summit, in Songdo, South Korea are a couple of examples. And she's armed with an education in economics, journalism, and business administration. So welcome, Manisha.
Thank you. I just sent a very long one so that you could take out whatever you wish to. Seems like you read it all.
No,
Thank
no,
you
no
so
worries.
much for having me.
We're very thrilled to have you here, and I know you mentioned that it's the first time you're on the other side. So yeah,
On this conversation, on any kind of conversation around gender and sustainability, yes.
Yes. So welcome. We also have Shruti in the room today with us. Shruti currently holds the position newly minted, announced just this week, of Managing Director of Regions and Mayoral Engagement. And she continues to be Regional Director for South and West Asia at C40 Cities. At C40 Cities, she closely collaborates with city leadership to accelerate climate action. She has about 2 decades of global experience specializing in energy efficiency and sustainability. She has contributed to diverse projects at Will Alsop Architects, Arup, and USAID, as well as IFC. And beyond her professional roles, she has also shared her expertise as a faculty member in sustainable design and esteemed institutions worldwide, including Stanford University, California College of Arts, and the School of Planning and Architecture in Delhi. As a friend that I have known for many years, Shruti is also amongst the most fun people that I've worked with. So welcome, Shruti.
Thank you, Alok. Delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
Yep. And last but by no means the least, we have Ranjita Ravi join us today. Ranjita is a leader with an impressive career spanning diverse industries. Recognized for her leadership, she brings a wealth of experience from various roles. And as I read more about these roles, um, she is the co-creator of the Mantis electric motorcycle. We will run a little video of it because I think it is just such a cool vehicle. But before co-founding Orha Energies, that has created this motorcycle, she also held key positions at AB InBev, specializing in risk and internal audit. And she served as biopharma lead analyst at Traction. She has steered internal audit teams at Sanofi, overseeing assignments across 20 countries, amassing extensive experience in CSR, marketing, and technology. One very interesting project that must be mentioned includes $5 million award-winning initiative for psychiatry telemedicine in Comoros and a bilingual comic book for educating sub-Saharan African children about epilepsy through football. So welcome, Ranjita.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alok. Excited to be here.
All right. So two of you have found your way to sustainability through your work over the years. And given that, I want to start with an audience poll about finding your way in sustainability, about learning the ropes, about how to get into this. It's a question that I get asked quite often, as I'm sure you all probably do too. So, with that, maybe we can look at the poll. So, it is a little difficult to read. So, I'm going to read out the options. So, if you want to, the participants, if you want to go to menti.com and use the code 78819684, you will be able to vote on this poll. And we also have the link here in chat. If you want to click on it, you will go straight to the, so that's not a link. Yeah, that's a link to menti.com. So one is that, yes, there are no easy answers. How do I go about this? The second option is no, I at least have a vague idea of the things I need to do to get up to speed. And the third option is I've been in the space for some years now, some time now, and I'm continuing to learn every day. So we'll give it another 30 seconds and see what we have in terms of responses. Can we extend the poll for a few seconds more? Because I feel like we don't have enough. Yeah, okay. All right. So maybe we can start reacting to this. Does this make sense? Anything surprising here? Maybe we'll start with Manisha.
Actually, it's not at all surprising. I pretty much expected this to be that most people do now have an interest in sustainability, especially the kind of people in the community that probably is engaged with us at this moment. There is no reason for them. I'm in fact very surprised that there are five or whatever, some numbers which are saying that there are no easy answers. How do I go about this? But most people do have a vague idea. They just need to get into it deeper, and either it's their busy lives or it's still not a priority, which doesn't make them make sustainability, or how can they make their lives and their environment more sustainable a priority for them, would be my guess.
Okay. Shruti, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I'm actually a bit surprised and slightly disappointed because I felt like we would have a lot more people I've been in the space for some time. And simply because I feel like sustainability is not now an option. It's a question of survival. And I feel like every day that we're living, we are experiencing some facets of that. So we're living in a space that's actually needing us to really respond to sustainability. And I'm actually quite disappointed that we are at a point when we're still kind of thinking about this as a topic, irrespective of where we work. I just think we're at a point of survival right now at the world.
Okay. How about Ranjita?
Yeah, I think I would probably echo Shruti just said, because right now, for example, where Bangalore is in terms of what's happening with our water situation and where we are in terms of all the misinformation. There were quite a bit of misinformation around electric vehicles over the last couple of days in the media as well. I think as people, we need to probably be seeing this as our default option, as we say, right? It has to be our default option, and that's going to be the only way we can live going ahead. So interested to see how we can probably work to change some more people's minds in this. And maybe the challenge is incorporating it into their daily lives. They are still seen as two separate things, sustainability and normal life, right? It's seen as, oh, I need to upend my entire way of living if I need to be sustainable, and that's not viable. So would be interesting to explore with the audience as to how if that's the perception.
Interesting. All right. So let's move on to the specific questions that I have for each of you about your journeys and about how you see some of this. So Manisha, I'll start with you first. You have gradually moved, or you've pivoted from reporting on money, business, economics, budget to first real estate and urban issues, and more in sustainability over the years. So was that was it gradual? Was it a conscious decision? Was it an epiphany? First, what happened there?
Well, it was gradual. There was no epiphany at all. It's just that I don't know how many of you know Vikram Chandra, but I used to be a business journalist specializing in personal finance. And then Vikram, this was, I think, 2013 or so. In fact, even earlier, 2011, 12. And he met somebody who had a lot of real estate data. And real estate was an extremely opaque industry at that point of time. There was no transparency. People would just go and buy what the brokers said. Developers were not, delivering in time. So basically, it was not a pleasant industry to be in. So he found the data. I was probably one of the senior editors with a little bit of time at my hands. So he trusted at me and said, run with it. So we started doing a real estate show, and once a week we would do this debate. uh, called the Realty Debate. And I think the deeper I went, though, that one show gave me some space to actually go deeper into the sector and understand what the challenges are. I think my first encounter with sustainable built environment came then. And I would like to really make it clear with the audience that for me, I'm still, I would say, that scratching the surface on sustainable built environment. And I'm not an area matter expert as the other two panelists are, Ranjita and Shruti. So anyway, long story short, that was the beginning. Went on to do, when I joined CNBC, Shireen was very keen. I floated the idea of doing just a city-based show because cities were crumbling. Ranjita just mentioned the water crisis in Bengaluru. We did the show last week on Bengaluru crisis, where the chairman of the sewerage board, water and sewerage board, actually came and promised there will not be a crisis in Bangalore, and it's just gotten worse. So yes, so that was the journey. But I think in the middle, the turning point, there was a turning point in this whole sustainability journey. In between my media career, I actually joined an organization called Brookfield. It's one of the largest private equity companies holding a real estate portfolio. And I went for a workshop to New York, and I actually saw the Canary Wharf team make a presentation on how it took them 5 years to get all the retailers to give up the use of plastic. 5 years, right? To me, it seemed like, my God, is that how much? And the effort that they explained in terms of the presentation that it took for them to bring every retailer in Canary Wharf onto that mandate and that vision, all the offices to go plastic free, to have water dispenser bottles, to recycle coffee cups. It was gobsmacking to see that it's such a tiny thing, seamlessly tiny thing, can take so long. The other encounter at Brookfield was when the team there was preparing for their first REIT. It's a very conscious company on sustainability goals for sure, globally. But here they required a portfolio which they had to retrofit, right? It was a unit tech portfolio which they had acquired. So I saw the struggle that the operations team had in retrofitting with sustainability measure to meet the GRESB criterias. I also saw a very interesting thing. They were building a Pune, they were planning to build in Pune. They acquired a land. And the first on draft was, the idea was to build a gold rated building. It's an office building. And I kept thinking, I said, why are you building only a gold rated building? Why can't you take it platinum? And the head of leasing said, Manisha, in Pune, nobody will pay the money, right? Nobody will pay the leasing charges. Like even 5 rupee per square foot it's a very price sensitive market. I will not be able to get it from an occupier. And then they started talking globally to MasterCard to take the entire space. And then they had no option but to take it platinum. In fact, beyond platinum, because MasterCard globally had such high standards in terms of what they would choose as a building. All of that was extremely fascinating for me because as a journalist, you're not privy to any of those things, right? What goes on? What are the struggles? What are the pulls and pushes of a market which actually lead to a sustainable built environment movement? Why are some people doing it? Why are some people not doing it? So I think that was fantastic. And then, of course, I moved on from Brookfield and I had some time at my hand during my garden leave. And I just did a course from London Business School on sustainable businesses, how to create sustainable businesses. It was a 3-month executive program. And I think at the end of it, I'm just going to close here. I think it just literally opened so many light bulbs in my head. And I said, you know what? We just scratched the surface as journalists who are looking at sustainability. Most importantly, I think what I took from the table after that course was, or I took from that course was that I understand greenwashing. I can understand and see through where someone is, any of the business CEOs that I speak to, do they really mean it? Or don't they, I can ask them the right questions and I can get to the bottom of how meaningful a business is when it comes to sustainability. So that's been my journey. I'm back to doing a show called The Urban Agenda on NDTV, and it is looking at sustainable cities and built environment.
Great. That's very interesting. I think we were in touch when this gold platinum certification thing was going on back when you were at Brookfield, and I did not know about the MasterCard example. So, and maybe in my follow-up question, I'll come back to that. But yeah, so let's move on maybe to Shruti. So Shruti, you started out an architect, you did building physics, then worked with one of the foremost consulting engineering firms in the world, bilateral, multilateral development agency funded programs, and now C40 cities. So very, very different, very diverse theories of change and levers for driving impact. So what's your, as you look back, what's your kind of take on what's the most, is there a most effective lever for driving impact at scale? What's the most effective theory of change? What's your take as you reflect back on your journey?
It's a very tough one, Alok, and I think it changes. It depends on when you ask, but maybe today, I just think reflecting on my journey, obviously I started out as I did architecture, and I think I really feel that probably instilled the understanding of the urban environment and the connection with natural resources, as it just got ingrained in my psyche, that we cannot live without having that balance with urban and nature. And I think to me that became kind of my theory of change as a person on how do you achieve that homeostasis, right? Like what would be the way to achieve that balance as we grow, and as I grow, and as we grow, as the global south grows, and then how do you balance development with economy and nature? And I think that's always been a big challenge, and being able to find the balance of all of that. And to me, and Alok, you'll probably have to stop me, right? Because this is kind of talking about my life. So I can maybe just go on and just pull the plug on me when you need to do that. But I think it's just that, I feel like to me at this particular moment is a moment where I struggle I have two parts, right? I struggle with climate anxiety because I really feel challenged by being able to wake up in the morning and feel like I can change the world, right? I can do something. And because we are at the brink of a climate breakdown, it's at a point where I just sort of really wonder, and then there is hope, right? Because when you read science and data, and, and those come, as you said, the context, data empowers us, right? And I think that is what gives me hope, when knowing that if we are able to really maintain the 1.5, which we may have reached, or 2, we could essentially, nature has a way of setting itself back to a sort of a balance where it was before. So there is hope, right? And that kind of what wakes me up in the morning. And when I read about, people like, let's say, Ranjita, or stories that Manisha puts out, I think these are very important, right? The balance of what we hear from media, because that helps. These are all ways of getting hope in knowing that you can continue as an ecosystem in collaborating with everyone to doing change that is data-driven, evidence-based, and that's causing an impact. And the last point that I want to make, because as I said, I can just keep going on and I wouldn't know where to stop, is what is my role in this micro or macrocosm, and how do I impact? So just kind of the top down and the bottom up, right? Like what can I do as a person living here? And then what can I do to change the frameworks in which the world can function, where my job comes in, where I work with very large cities in driving climate change, because cities will be the place where climate action will happen and get expedited. And C40 as a network of the top 100 cities, global cities, where the city leaders have committed to climate action, gives me hope, because on every day I see the kind of measures the cities are doing, and all backed up by data, right? Like data-driven evidence-based analysis to understand what is the impact of greenhouse gas emissions, where are they coming, how do they support entrepreneurs, what kind of regulatory measures they have, and what kind of financial mechanisms should be put in place so that there is sort of a very inclusive and equitable way of living. And also the fact that now we're talking about climate and health, and to me, that's really important, because people for the longest time, and that kind of is what disappointed me in the poll, when I think there's a disconnect from people not understanding that this is a question of our health. The reason that we have high vector-borne diseases and are facing all of these is because we're heating, and we're totally skewing the way the world, was before. And I think when all of these things come together, it just kind of makes you want to keep doing your work and getting inspired. So I still believe that there is hope. And, I really think that we can change the way we live. And, I always go to this Christopher Reeve's quote, when you choose hope, everything is possible. And I want to continue to believing in that. And so that's sort of a summary of my trajectory and what keeps me going.
Cool. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to get to you, Ranjita, but I also want to show a video of what you have created, because like I said before, it is just so cool that it'd be we'd be remiss to not have this video. All right. Cool. I think that also had some great audio, but we did not get that. But at any rate, so Ranjita, you did a bachelor's in biotech engineering, but then you went on to work in pharma, internal audit and risk, and including access to medicine and so on. So even within STEM, for any person, very, very diverse set of experiences. And then, I'm just kind of curious about how do you go from that to creating performance vehicles and energy systems for performance sectors like aerospace and defense. So I think a lot of people would be very curious about what brought you here, and how all of the experiences that you've had have culminated into where you are now.
So I think for me, I always did want to build something on my own. The idea and the thought for Aura Energies actually came much later. My co-founder and I, we were based out of Europe for a good part of a decade. I did my business school there. Then, worked there for a while and all of that, and would come back to India, say once or twice a year. And, you would see how fast India was growing, because when you're in India, it's like we're in the frog in the pot kind of a situation, right? We're being boiled alive, but we don't notice it. But when you leave and you come back every so often, or once a year, twice a year, you see how fast things are changing. The idea for Aura Energies came from that. And it came from the fact that we wanted to build a motorcycle that we would ride, right? There was a lot of work happening and a lot of noise happening around motorcycles or low power scooters for a more mass market, more commuter kind of segment. But unless we figure out how to electrify pretty much all of our transport in a very credible and legit way that does not require people to change their lifestyles. And this is something that I believe very strongly about sustainability, right? You have to figure out the incentives in a way that people adopt it without changing so much of their lifestyle. It shouldn't be like they feel like they're being punished into being more sustainable. So that was the thought behind the origins of the Mantis. it did help that, of course, my co-founder and CTO came from aerospace and defense as a segment previously. So we applied a lot of what we do in drones, and specifically heavy drones and defense systems as well. So the same tech that we built out, we put in, say, battery packs for heavy drones, or heavy one-ton vehicles with defense, or battery packs that run in deserts or glaciers or things like that. So that's some of the work that we've done. There are many things in the Mantis itself, and probably this is a forum and an audience that understands it better. The Mantis is circular economy ready. When you take it to a bunch of bikers on a racetrack, they're not going to get this, or they don't need to get this. They don't need this. The Mantis is circular economy ready by design, right? It's fully recyclable. The battery packs already have a plan for second life and then for recycling, right? But the guy who's going to race the Mantis on the racetrack, or the guy who's going to buy the Mantis for his commute or going to office or going out in the evenings or whatever it is, he doesn't care about this. This is not his decision driver. So it's up to us as organizations and as businesses to build that into it and not punish the customer with the cost of it. And for me, this has been part of my learning over whatever I've done, whether it's, like it was kind of, you mentioned the project that I did. So the epilepsy, it's teaching kids about epilepsy, that epilepsy is not like a curse or something in sub-Saharan Africa, but it's just a disease that can be treated with proper medication, and it's you can have a completely normal life and play football, right? Or something like telepsychiatry project. There are so many barriers to entry already that you're making something so difficult to access. So why not make it easier to access? We believe that sustainability is the same thing at Aura Energies, right? So my biker customer who is making a choice between buying a KTM Duke and buying a Mantis is probably thinking about total cost of ownership and how much he's going to save on petrol cost or servicing cost or something like that. But their decision is still financial, right? It is my job as an organization to figure out that the Mantis is already circular economy ready. The Mantis is already, the battery packs are already recyclable. The battery packs are already second life ready. And all of these things are baked into it by design. And then when my customer is done with the Mantis, that whole product has another life, right? So this is something that my journey, whether it was in sales, whether it was in CSR, whether it was in audit, traveling around the world, has given me a sort of an insight into making the Mantis the way the Mantis is, while being absolutely fun to ride, without being a burden. It should be fun. It should be great. It should be amazing to ride. You shouldn't want to get off the bike. And hell, if you save 1,000 liters of petrol along the way, then why not do it?
No, that's great messaging. One of the things that I often say is that the first generation of the paper straws did a very big disservice to moving away from plastic straws, right? Because they were just so lousy.
Not you, like,
yeah.
That's why you need to think from a very, very customer point of view when you're creating these products, right? Like, it would be so easy for me to make a tiny little motor and a tiny battery pack and then just say that, hey, I made a motorcycle, but the customer wasn't ready for it.
Yeah. Cool.
He's not going to buy into it unless you make it an exact 1:1 replacement for his use case. But with the advantage that, hell, he doesn't have to spend, 4,000, 5,000 rupees on petrol and 4,000 rupees of service.
Yep.
He's going to be happy saving that money.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. So I am going to move on to the theme for the day, which is International Women's Day. The world is coming to a boil, literally, as a lot of us have spoken about. And as I also spoke about with the context setting, that the representation of women in leadership is abysmal. And one easy way to fix it would be to just say that, we just need to have half of the women, half of the leaders should be women, right? And that would solve a lot of our world's problems. So I thought let's do a quick poll about this, and then we'll also have some reactions, and we'll talk about this. So do the participants here think that having at least 50% women in decision-making roles, so whether it's boards, chairs, C-suite, legislation, will it help solve the world's problems? So that's one part of the question. Yeah, we can keep it for like maybe, yeah, 1 minute is good. So fastest finger first, let's go quickly because this is a two-part question with some interesting options on the second part as well. So again, same code, I think, 78819684 on menti.com. I think we should have prefaced this also with the gender composition of the audience. So if any of you are passively listening, this would be a good time to respond to this poll. Okay. So I think at no point did we go below 70-30 or thereabouts, is what I saw. Let's go on to the next question before we take reactions from our panel. So here it says, what's the minimum representation of women in decision-making roles that is needed, according to you, to solve the world's problems? So one is we don't need to change anything. 33%, which is our Women's Reservation Act or bill, 50%, 67%, and the last option is 100% men are responsible for this mess. Looks like we have a balance between, or we have a competition between balance and the truth. Okay. So, all right, I think we can stop. Okay, maybe 10 seconds, last 10 seconds. So I guess there's consistency in the responses. When you add up the 50%, 67%, and the 100%, it comes to about 73%, which is what the yes was for the previous question. Reactions, is this as expected? Are you surprised? Any thoughts around the room? Maybe Ranjita, will start with you first. Anything you're in heated agreement or heated argument with?
I actually, okay, how do I say this? As a woman founder in a hardware startup, and the number of manuals I have been part of, and the number of discussions and panel discussions where I have been the only person of my gender in the room, I think we are so far away. I don't even know if 33 is the answer, or 50 is the answer, or 67 is the answer, because we are nowhere near any of those numbers. Specifically in hard engineering and hard science.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. So for example, when we did our launch of the Mantis bike, I was very insistent on getting as many women bikers as possible to come and ride the Mantis. Right? We were so hard pressed to find any. I think we managed to find 3 or 4 out of the more than 50 people. Okay, so I think we're very, very far away from 33. So yeah, well, I don't even know if there is a minimum number that would tip the scale. I'm sure there's research on it, but especially in hardware, in STEM, in engineering.
Yeah. So you're saying even if we get to 33, that'll be like really great.
Even if they
Right now we're very
10% would probably be great at that business.
Yeah, I would. It would be nice to be in a room where all the automotive OEMs are sitting and have at least one more person.
Yep. Sure.
Really. Or you know, like this happened 3 weeks ago. It was a room with all the top automotive OEMs who are working on electric vehicles. The entire panel discussion, no one else.
Yep. No, the manuals definitely. I mean, I think, but the manuals are also a representation of our reality. I think that's what we need to change.
It's happened twice in February to me. 2 discussions. One which was organized by a media house, one which was organized by a player in the EV space. Closed panel door discussions. Both of them.
But Alok, I've been doing real estate and construction and built environment discussions, and I struggle to find women to come and represent. I mean, it's probably slightly, maybe just marginally better, but there are only 2% as what I've just learned by with a campaign that I saw by Tata Realty saying that there are 2% women in construction industry at a CXO level. It is quite, the industry that I come from is so gender equal. And I think that when I shifted to the world of private equity, it was quite a shock, right? To see how decisions are taken and how little your voice matters. And it was nothing personal. It was nothing not specific to a culture. It's just there. It's absolutely there. And then going from an organization like NDTV, where I think the men felt a bit discriminated, right? It was just completely different. We had creches to support us when we had 6 months maternity leave, when it was not even mandated. Organizations were giving 45 days, maximum 3 months. We had 6 months paid leave. There was so much support. In that creative world, there are so many women, right? As marketing, advertising, media, you don't really feel, and most of my early career years have been in that industry. But briefly, when I did move to the other side, it was very stark, extremely stark. And of course, I knew it because all my panels, mostly, I don't get women to come on my panel discussions. Now I do a little bit better if I'm discussing sustainability as a topic. There are a lot more women in that area specializing, but hardcore construction and real estate is very hard to find. But I'd like to go back to the question where you said, would it be a better world, or would the outcomes be better? I think they would just be more empathetic, caring, and equal, right? On sustainability, the outcomes can only be better. Either you assume that women are more empathetic, and which is a fact, and caring, and therefore they will care more about the environment. And a clear case and example is Indra Nooyi, who writes in her, Pepsi isn't the most ideal topic to take because it is unhealthy food. But even within her gamut of leadership of the business that she took over, she did try to move the needle on healthier food. She did try to move the needle on sustainability. She did not brook, antagonism against it, which is probably a man leader or a male leader would have probably given up much faster, much sooner. Numbers matter a lot more. Having said that, I think it's also, I would say that male leader who's also empathetic can probably achieve the same results. I think that's not a question anymore. If we are going to keep sustainability outcomes at the center of this conversation, then I don't think the outcomes would be different if it was an empathetic male leader versus a empathetic female leader. But yes, overall, the world will look at sustainability far more seriously if there was gender parity and gender equality. There is no getting away with it because I think we get sleepless nights, like Shruti said. I really do worry about my children's future and rise and climate change. I do worry about how much their lungs are getting compromised. Like at 50, I feel I've lived the best part of my life, but I feel that they're young and living in NCR, their lungs are so compromised. I've driven the entire family to go single plastic free. We do biocomposting at home. So, I definitely think that on sustainability outcomes, if you have a more equal workplace, you will see the goals being met faster and with a lot more care. But I don't agree that, it's men can't achieve that. There are hugely dominant male organizations which are doing phenomenal work as well.
Okay. Shruti?
So Alok, I think both Ranjita and Manisha have covered most of it. Just the point that I want to add is that, this is established. I think this is sort of been around. We've been talking about gender for, I don't know, without giving numbers, but it's been a decade or more. We've lived in the US where they were talking about it. And I think I would say that it's definitely, they always say that it may not be the solution to a problem, but the fact that you're thinking of a problem, that leads to change. And I really think we have come a far way, at least in the way I've seen industries change. The fact, Ranjita, you were able to launch this and be there in a room, it probably may not have been possible 10 years back, right? So I think that it's changing for sure. And I really appreciate the alignment that there needs to be a balance. I'm not saying that women do things better, also agree with Manisha, but I just, the two couple of things that I want to say is that, and I think Manisha probably, also, I think women are, they are system thinkers. And to me, that's why the change and impact that they bring with them being on a decision-making table is far more empathetic and systemic. Because just the fact, Manisha, that you're able to think of your children and the whole ecosystem of how that can happen is, I really feel like there's certain kind of, a view that women have that allows them that kind of thinking, and that I think makes decisions that they make more empathetic, more ecosystem driven, more sort of balanced. And I think that's sort of what is needed in what we're trying to achieve. And then I just want to also give a flip side that I also sometimes feel like to bring women in, there are a lot of things that happen, right? Like, not quoting, but like we give like free bus rides, or women truck drivers get, but I also feel like we're not thinking of what they really need, right? Because they need a safe space to rest, toilets, and things like, secure streets to walk in. So I think this is great, but I think we have to have a way of getting here. And that needs to start from educating, like from nursery education, right? You can't suddenly imagine that you'll have a lot of women in leadership position if they're not being nurtured. And it's like it's a growth paradigm story, right? So how do you kind of structure that? So that's just sort of, this is all like, it's very aligned. And I think everybody knows this. Everybody's going to talk. And just two quick we've seen the microfinance industry in India. I mean, I worked at IFC, and they completely transformed it because they focused on women, right? Gave women the power of making those decisions, really were able to impact. In climate, for example, we're looking at insurance right now. There have been some models that have been done, for example, in Ahmedabad with Seva. We've seen Mahila Housing Trust, great models, right, of really looking at how women can make a change, like ASHA workers. So all of those models are on, like, they're tried and tested. I just think that we need a systemic approach that is able to transform the ecosystem in a whole to achieve this.
Okay, so we are in our last 9 minutes now, and I did have another round of questions for all of you, but I'm going to see if we have any questions from the audience. So I'm looking at some of these questions.
Yeah. Can I take mine, which says question to Manisha Natarajan, how do you think
Sure.
television journalism can contribute to raising awareness about sustainability?
Mhm.
It's a chicken and an egg situation. And I just want everybody, this has always been a question that's been asked to me, that why isn't media focusing more on sustainability? Why are they not giving it more space? The problem is, what does the audience want to watch? Media cannot operate it's not getting funded, right, by the UK government, right? Like BBC is, so they can do a lot more sustainability programming. Even there, it's the eyeballs, right? The sustainability conversations are not watched. Now, if there is a water crisis in Bengaluru, you can hope for people to watch that show. If there is a underground metro tunnel inauguration, you can do a show around green mobility, right? But on a daily basis, these are not conversations which get you the numbers, which get you the eyeballs, which get you the viewers, and get you the advertisers, right? How do you think television journalism can contribute more? Oh, absolutely, it will. The more you talk about these issues, and there has been a huge increase in conversations over the last 5 to 6 years, where there's electric mobility, there's a lot more conversation and discussion and debate going around. We had, whether it's C40, there are write-ups around it, there are columns around it. But does it make it to the front page? No, it still doesn't make it to the front page unless it's like a global summit which is happening and nothing is achieved or very little is achieved, and the prime ministers are meeting or the state leaders are meeting. But other than that, it will not, because people are not reading enough about it. It's not interesting people enough. It's still a very small microcosm which cares enough to search for that content, land on that content. The algorithms in digital have made it absolutely now clear, right? If I click on 5 articles on green mobility, I will keep getting thrown with that content, right? But if I'm only clicking on an Ambani wedding, that's all the kind of content I'm going to get. And then when my SEO person, or when we are taking editorial decisions in the morning on what should we focus on, what should be headlines, it is going to be the Ambani wedding which will make the headline, right? So all that I'm trying to say is that there has to be a societal change in the kind of content that they're consuming for media to actually do more of this. It's not that we don't want to do meaningful journalism, and I might have got the space after many years to do it. Young reporters don't even have that space to report on sustainability. It's not that they don't care, but it does not get them the click-throughs. Their videos are not watched, or their articles are not read. So therefore they're pushed into they're growing. They want to do things which make their work be noticed by the audience, right? And by the viewers. If that's not happening, they pivot. And then they will go back and, report on frivolous things. So we want to, or a political slugfest or elections, because that is where the eyeballs are, or the Ram Mandir. So all that I'm saying is that, look, so there has to be more demand for this kind of content. People have to care more about sustainability issues. They have to be curious about it. They must want to know more about it. Media will have to serve them. It's, after all, a vehicle. The other way that media can do more work is if they have meaningful sponsorships, right? So if there's no viewership or not enough viewership, then there has to be monies which have to be put behind that sort of a programming. that happens, then you do it. So I'll stop there. But yeah, huge change can happen because it is an important space, but it's a chicken and egg situation. That we find ourselves in media stuck in.
Okay. Ranjita, do you want to go next on your questions? The question for you is on behavioral change as an impediment to climate action. What have you accounted for behavioral change towards conscious greener choices post adoption of Mantis products?
Yeah, so I think the best way to engineer good climate products, especially if you're thinking about, say, automotive or any other engineering thing, is to really put the customer front and center and how they use their vehicles. What is it that they're doing when they use their products? So then see about the patterns in their behavior and how to account for that in an engineering way. Okay. So for example, what do my customers mostly do? 80% of the time they're commuting, 20% of the time they want to do leisure. What does that mean in terms of what I want to do for my battery pack size, my range that I want to give? What does that mean in terms of the power that I want to give or the size of the motor? And then all of these have downstream or upstream impact on what is the kind of lithium-ion packs I'm using, what is the kind of rare earth magnets I'm using, what is the kind of all of that happens, right? So behavioral change comes by nudging. Okay, so certain things are already acceptable, right? Like EV is going to be cheaper to run because service cost is less, fuel cost is less. Over the lifetime of say 50,000 or 1 lakh kilometers, EV is going to be way cheaper. You're going to save a lot of money. Sorted. Everyone has this in their head. Now, the only thing that's a challenge is the range anxiety. How am I going to use this? I need to go 95% of the time, I'm only going 10 kilometers to my office. That 5% of the time or 1% of the time, I want to go Bangalore to Pondicherry. How do I solve for that? And hence EVs will not work. But that's not the point, right? So this is what you need to start doing. And that's kind of why one example is we did that long ride. We did that world record ride a couple of years back where we did 13,500 kilometers on a motorcycle. But yeah, you need to nudge. I think that's how you account for behavior change.
Okay. All right. Lots of questions for Shruti as well. I feel like I can let you take your pick. But the one that's interesting to me is that what are some of the things that cities can do and are doing to combat the climate crisis?
I mean, it'll take me like, I don't know,
I
many
don't know, we'll
hours.
ask.
So I would say that, the easy way to answer this, Alok, would be that I can direct the participants and the attendees to C40 has a website called the Knowledge Hub. And that actually includes a lot of examples globally that cities are doing, very action-oriented, data-driven on combating climate crisis. And also it answers some of the other questions on what are the main challenges, what are the innovations. So I would really suggest, in the interest of time, that please do refer to our website that has a wealth of knowledge on cities.
Okay. Let's go to closing thoughts. We are on the top of the hour. Is there something that's a standout opportunity or something that gives you hope or a commitment? Because I think we've spoken about, some of the challenges, but, that as a leader, is there something that you would commit to or a standout opportunity on either gender or on climate that you would want to talk? Rapid fire, 20 seconds each.
I would say technology, human ingenuity and technology. There's this, and like Shruti said, she wakes up with hope. And look at Ranjita. I mean, a young biotechnologist who's switched to hard engineering and solving for such a critical problem like mobiles, right? I mean, giving you a product which you would want to buy. I think we'll be okay.
Okay.
I think, yeah,
Well,
my was also just hope, right? We got to keep working at it. It's easy to just get bogged down by a lot of the climate news that's there, or even just generally on the gender news and things like that. It's easy to get bogged down by all of that, but you got to see the good and you got to keep working at it as best as you can. Nudge people to better behavior.
Okay. Shruti?
So I will say, I think, yeah, of course, totally agree with that. But I also think that collaboration and having these kind of platforms. So Alok, I really want to say that what a fantastic panel you have put together and the thinking behind. I mean, I feel inspired by meeting and hearing Ranjita and Manisha. It's given me fueled me for another couple of years, knowing that there is so much happening in two very divergent but convergent sectors. So that gives me hope. So thank you for actually bringing this sort of collaboration and making at least us aware that all of this is happening, and giving us the hope that there's so much work that's happening, and we will be okay. So yeah.
All right. Thanks, Shruti, for closing for me. But I think this has been a great panel discussion. I also want to say that we're going to give each of you for being panelists in the inaugural and wildcard questions for all further panels that we will have. So all the difficult questions, keep them written down, share them with me. Even if you're not there, we will share them with our future panels. Our next episode is going to be on unboxing sustainability, where we're going to talk about the packaging industry. We're in the process of lining up some great speakers for that as well. So stay tuned for that. And in the meanwhile, anywhere that we can continue this conversation, whether it's the LinkedIn posts or any such place, because there are a lot of questions that I think so clearly this has elicited some interest and curiosity. Yeah, so I'm we're happy to facilitate that conversation going forward, and we will get back to you with your wildcard questions for the next panel. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Alok. Thank you so much for moderating
Thank
this. Thank
you.
you, Ranjita, Shruti.
Thank you. Bye.
Nice getting to know you.
Thanks to
Bye.
the audience. Bye, everyone.
Bye.